What's happening, everybody? It's Big Ten today. I am Anthony Hare, alongside my guy Jake Lutz. Jake Butt in the house right now, getting ready to talk some spring football. Big show. We are not only talking spring football from this past weekend, spring football coming up this weekend on the network and beyond. I mentioned Curt Cignetti, the Indiana Hoosiers coach, will join us as well. And of course, the WNBA draft. Megan McCune will be here in a few minutes to break down everything we saw last night. Jake, I do want to take you back to a time many moons ago when you were a young football player, before your accolades and your tight end awards and everything else. What did spring football mean to a young Jake Butt in Ann Arbor?
Well, I was an early enrollee too, which has now become a more common practice in college football. And it was my first experience in the big house. It was my first game where, you could actually put a stamp on it and say there was a win or a loss, or a winner and a loser. And I just remember the nervousness, the excitement, feeling the opportunity of what this game could be. I've been having a good spring, and I really wanted to put a conclusion on it to show coaches, hey, spring ball, really, you don't make the team, but you earn opportunities. It gives you a starting point in camp. So I made a few plays and blocked decently well, and I just remember leaving the stadium saying, you know what, maybe I can play at this level. Your family's in the stands. It concludes those 15 practices. It's just great for a young player to get that first experience and taste of what college football really is.
Well, there's plenty of that on the field this past weekend. That dovetails nicely into today's big story, where there were 3 different Big Ten football teams on the field for the spring game. Ohio State, Penn State, and Purdue were all out there. The Scarlet defeated the Gray 34-33. Will Howard got the reps with the first team. Penn State was out there. The White defeated the Blue 27-0. Drew Aller had a big day passing the football, and hammered down, defeated Boiler up 17-13 at Ross-Ade Stadium, where Jake was watching Hudson Card get the first team reps at QB. Let's go ahead and start in Columbus, Jake, where Ohio State, of course, the anticipations of their national championship pursuits and everything else, with the new talent that is there in Columbus, what Ryan Day has at his disposal at quarterback. What were your overall impressions of what you saw from the Buckeyes?
A lot of what we talked about last week, I felt, came to fruition. The defense absolutely stood out, and we can dive deeper into that in a second. And this is true for Penn State and Ohio State. A windy day, that's the context, because we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. But, hey, it's spring football, which means this isn't a real game, which means it's not always as smooth operationally. We had heard so much about Julian Sayin and how he was making this quarterback battle, and yet I think the young guys struggled a little bit, and the veterans actually played well. Will Howard probably had, one of his best days throughout the spring, it seemed like. Devin Brown did some nice things, even with his legs. Interesting to hear Ryan Day talk about how he wants to include that more in the offense this year. And it made me think back to my childhood in Columbus and playing against Ohio State, where you had Terrell Pryor, you had Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett, Justin Fields. Those offenses would scare the crap out of you, man, because they were already so talented, and then a quarterback that can run the ball is just so threatening. So I felt the veteran quarterbacks won the day, but again, it's one practice that doesn't trump the full spring. And that defense is absolutely loaded. I was writing all my words here: disruptive, dangerous, destructive.
Oh, a lot of D words. I like the alliteration. Yeah.
Extremely deep. And again, Jim Knowles, this is a complex defense. It's aggressive. Each year that you learn the intricacies means you can go deeper in understanding what's trying to be accomplished. And what showed up, particularly in some of these third down packages, was that aggressive, downhill, high pressure, suffocating Jim Knowles defense. I thought they did a great job generating pressure. On the flip side, I think there's still room for improvement for Ohio State's offensive line.
Okay.
When you think about all the talent, we know the skill position. Great to see Ibuka make highlight plays. We know we're excited about Jeremiah Smith. The backfield's loaded. But, that game in late November against Michigan, they have a Ferrari right now. But the O-line is the engine, right? That car is only going to go as fast as the engine. Because when you're playing Michigan, they got a great defensive line: Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham. If the O-line can't play dominant or struggles to protect whoever the quarterback is, then it doesn't exactly matter what's on the outside. So much to be excited for in Columbus. I expect the O-line to be improved. It's a natural progression, but I think that's where Ohio State has to dominate, and it'll be in the trenches.
I'm here for all the Jake Butt metaphors, by the way. Let's see how many of them we can squeeze in throughout the show. The engine, the Ferrari, you name it, everything else. So last season, we saw Ryan Day do something he really hadn't done much of before. He began the season with a QB rotation, and this year, still some uncertainty at quarterback because we haven't seen any of the guys there take major snaps for the Buckeyes, although Devin Brown was a part of that early season rotation last year. Do you see, is it plausible that that could be a formula again for Ryan Day and Chip Kelly?
It absolutely could be, but no coach will tell you that that's what they want. Okay. You know, every coach wants to have this decided. And I've been a part of a few quarterback battles at my time at Michigan. You know, Jake Rudock transferred in from Iowa. It was him versus Shane Morris.
Yeah, right.
Wilton Spate, John O'Corn, Shane Morris. My senior year, there was a battle there. And I think one of the biggest things that, you know, aside from the X's and O's and the throwing the football, your quarterback for the great teams is the voice of your locker room. He's the clear leader. And when you have a quarterback battle going around, it's harder for one guy to step up and say, this is my team. What if you're wrong? Mm-hmm. So I think in a perfect scenario, what Ryan Day would like is to have one guy separate in that early part of fall camp so they can start to say, hey, here's the keys to the team. We have a roster that can win a national title. You go lead these guys.
And if they don't separate until in the fall camp, maybe you're less likely to have guys hit the portal as well, depending on how these things
That's a whole other piece of this.
Yeah, yes. Right. No doubt. And the portal window is opening today as we speak here. But let's go to State College, where Penn State took the field. They had the blue and the white going at it. And James Franklin, we talked last week about the continuity he provides at the top of things. Each new coordinator, Kotelnicki and Allen out there, offensively, defensively, some special teams seen as well at Beaver Stadium. What stood out to you about what we saw from the Nittany Lions?
Okay, one thing, again, the context matters because the defense looks strong. The defense is going to be great. It was great to see Abdul Carter flying around and making plays. The secondary was able to force some turnovers. A.J. Harris, the new cornerback, transferred in from Georgia. I think he had 7 tackles in a PBU. Defense looks great, okay? That 4-2-5 scheme with Tom Allen now, okay, defense is good. So what about the offense? Singleton and Allen didn't play, top 2 running backs. Tyler Warren, your top tight end, didn't play. We heard James Franklin talk about Keandre Lambert-Smith. They're going to part ways and go a different direction. You know, Drew Aller didn't even play on the same team as Julian Fleming, who may be their wide receiver 1. A bunch of offensive line pieces didn't play. So I say that to say this. Again, a windy day. There was some great things done by Drew Aller. The talent is clearly there, but I think it left something to be desired. And again, it's the spring game, so I say all that to open, just to put it into context. You can't read too much into it. Kotelnicki's offense, I expect, just listening to the guys talk, there will be motions, there will be shifts, there's going to be a bunch of different personnels, a lot more creativity in the season. You're not going to show that in the spring game. So again, I say that to put it into context. What I will say is encouraging is who's going to be this wide receiver 1? It felt like Drew Aller was going to his guy Harrison Wallace, who I remember talking to coaches last year. This guy is speedy. He's got the chance to be a dangerous weapon. He had 5 catches for about 72 yards. That's really encouraging. They need an alpha dog in that room, especially with Lambert-Smith transferring out. And you know I got to talk about tight ends. So they had a true freshman, Andrew Rappelier. He had 3 catches, nice big catch late in the 4th quarter for a touchdown, but he had 8 targets on the day. Okay, when you're an early enrollee, when you're a true freshman, we can read into the fact if the ball's coming your way 8 times, you've done something to build trust in that quarterback room. Right. And really, the Penn State's done a great job of developing tight ends and putting them into the NFL. I know Iowa's going to capture the headlines, but Penn State's put some guys into the NFL. Theo Johnson's up next. So, is it going to – they need to elevate the weapons in the wide receiver room, but don't be surprised if the tight ends step up as well.
When you think about Drew Aller, you were talking about him a moment ago, going into this fall, last season he was remarkably efficient. He protected the football at such a high rate for a first-year starter. How would you see the potential for Drew Aller taking more risks, more chances with the football? Would that be advisable this year?
It'll be as advisable as the context of do you feel the offense and the play calling gives you a chance. Like, you know, I don't want to take a risk if there's a 25% chance of winning, you know, but hey, we say 50-50 balls, sure, you have to take some of those. You know, last year, that was one of the big problems with Penn State is even though they were scoring points, the explosive plays weren't quite there.
Yeah.
But Kotelnicki's what I fully expect to see is much more creativity, which opens the chance for explosive plays. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bo Prabila on the field and we see two quarterbacks at times. So he clearly has the arm talent to do it. Again, it's the spring game.
Yeah.
I expect they absolutely have to emphasize that.
Well, let's transition to West Lafayette, where you were. And one of the things that really stood out to me and just kind of checking things out with Purdue was the juice in Ross-Ade Stadium, man. I mean, it looked like the crowd was there. They were into it. Just set that scene for me before we talk about anything else. I mean, how energized was the stadium?
Well, they redid it last year to open the stadium. And that tunnel, I walked it, I'm like, oh, man, they got speakers in there. And as they walked out, they got the smoke coming.
Yeah.
And, one thing about Ryan Walters is, he's a younger coach. He's going to recruit well, and he's going to bring the juice. And you're exactly right. It did feel like that. Even down on the field, it was competitive. That's going to be a piece of this because you think of those teams in the middle pack of the Big Ten, and Purdue's got a really tough schedule. They've revamped the roster. But can they play confident? Can they make a mistake and then get back right on track to who they want to be? I'll tell you one thing that stood out. The offensive line, they were without a few key guys that weren't playing in the spring game, guys that were injured last year. That offensive line is night and day. I mean, Hudson Card, when you look at it, he had a lot of time. Operationally, the ball was out on time where it needed to be. There's a lot of question marks in the Big Ten on, who's going to be the top quarterback. Hudson Card was honorable mention all Big Ten. He's got the talent to do it. Was beat up last year. I thought the offensive line looked good. And then they revamped this wide receiver room, man. Deion Burks is out. They bring in a bunch of guys, a couple young freshmen, C.J. Smith. He looked good. Traymar Harris was another guy that stepped up. So Max Clare's the tight end. There's so much new with so many of these teams. It is the era of transfer portal. So I think it's got to be encouraging for Purdue fans to sit out there and say, hey, our quarterback is back, and yet he looked comfortable spreading the ball around to a lot of new pieces. I also like their young quarterback, Marcos Davila.
Yeah, right.
Looked good. As an early enrollee, like he looked sure of himself. The ball was out where it needed to be. I mean, he should be going to his high school prom. I thought that was really encouraging because Hudson Card will be gone, and you do have a succession plan now with Marcos Davila.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him. I saw him in San Antonio for the All-American Bowl, and I described him there as just a mature passer. He's got some nuance to the way he throws the ball, some confidence there.
That's exactly how he looked out on the field.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought his name up. Really excited about him, as Purdue fans should be as well. Took the reps with the second team. We're not done taking spring football reps here on the show, but we're going to stop looking in the rearview mirror, start to look ahead to the games on the docket this weekend. Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana, and USC amongst the teams. But also, let's hear from the mouth of the maestro. Curt Cignetti is going to be on the field on Thursday night. There's Coach. He'll join us next. That brings us to today's big interview, and why not welcome in the aforementioned Curt Cignetti, who is leading his Hoosiers onto the field for the first time this Thursday night. Coach, I'm really eager. I'm really excited to see what you guys do on the field for the first time. I mean, you've been at this for a few weeks with the guys now. How would you describe, what's a word you would use for how you're anticipating Thursday night?
Only one word?
I mean, if you can muster one, yeah.
I think we'll be fine. Based on our practice today, I'd say the guys are really saving themselves for Thursday. Now I know why I had a walk through the practice before our spring game last year.
And the eagerness that I referenced, because you have, like I referenced, you've been doing it for a few weeks with the guys here, but a lot of time spent in workouts and meetings before that. How different is it once you're actually able to be on the practice field, really getting to know the guys there?
I think it was a lot different because the way we practice, I think, is a lot different than what the players that were here in the past are accustomed to. I mean, if you want to get the guys better, you got to try to simulate a game as much as you can because games happen fast. You got to be able to react to success, failure, a lot of moving parts. So I think by the third practice, they started to get it. There were a lot of practices that felt like practices in the past. And they were fairly consistent for the most part, except for one or two after scrimmages that weren't quite up to the standard. So, you're putting in a new offense, new defense, special teams, what your standards, expectations are. And I give these guys a lot of credit. I thought they put together a great effort.
And normally we see a lot of coaches who maximize like every single hour, every date available to them. You don't necessarily have that opportunity with 13 practices available to you this spring. But as far as I can tell, you don't seem too bothered by the 13 out of 15 available. But why are you comfortable with being able to function in that way?
Well, sometimes less can be more. And, what's a magic number? I don't know. To me, the goals in the spring, first and foremost, you got to keep your guys healthy, especially your key guys. You can't lose guys to long-term injury. And in our case, we had to teach an offense, defense, special teams, and how we practice and what we expect, what our standards and expectations are, consistency and performance, and, how we conduct ourselves on the field. So I'm a short practice guy. I've never gone 15 practices. I've never gone 25 in the fall. It's worked for me. So I'm not going to change what's worked.
It's definitely worked well for you. There's no doubt about that over the years. And I've been able to talk to you on the radio before and just watching you interview quite a bit. There seems to be this degree of urgency about you and also blended with a good amount of confidence. Have you always been kind of wired in this way, or has that been born over years just with success in the game?
Well, I guess it's probably been honed and developed a little bit more since I've been a head coach. This is year 14. I think when you take a new job like that, you're learning. The second year, you're a lot better than the first. And by about the fifth or sixth, you kind of got it down. So, a big part of taking this job was, I felt the commitment from the administration. But in my mind, I'd done this job twice already, 2 turnarounds where you had a big year one. So you're always looking to improve because you get better, you get worse. But, we got a blueprint, we got a plan, we work our plan every day and we get results. So I think, when you are successful, you probably develop some confidence through those successes that rubs off on other people. The key is to stay successful.
And what's your normal approach? Because to your point, you have done this. You've taken over programs, taken them to new heights at previous stops. Do you normally spend time evaluating film and kind of watching to get a gauge for your players' skills in the past, or do you just sort of start from scratch?
Well, the first thing I've always done when I take a new job is I have the old staff rate to returning team 1 to 50 and get an average so that when I walk in day one, that's sitting on my desk so I know who's who. We're definitely going to watch some film, especially in this day and age. This is the first job I took over where you had a transfer portal. And it was a quick process. I think I got hired in 3 days. And, they didn't tell me we had 10 offensive starters in the portal. Of course, I wouldn't have told me either. So, you got to make determinations when you got 24 guys total in the portal day one, who you want to keep and who you're going to let go. But we had great success. We brought 22 new guys in here, and most of them were 2-3-year starters. And they've really, I think, impacted our roster very significantly and sort of our identity that we're trying to form here. And, I think if you ranked our current team 1 to 40, a pretty large percentage of those guys would be in the top 10, 15 on our team right now.
And in some of those previous stops, you've had so much success at the quarterback position in your offensive system and at multiple schools with a variety of signal callers. Is there sort of a common thread that you look for in what makes a successful QB in your offense?
I think you got to work with what you got. I mean, we've had pure pocket guys, pure dual threat guys, and guys in between. And you got to assess his strengths and the strengths of your personnel on offense and try to design a system around the quarterback's strengths and everybody else's. And, I think Tino Sinceri, my quarterback coach, does a great job developing those guys. I've been a quarterback guy in the past. I'm pretty involved in the offensive meetings. But, we've also benefited from really good defensive play, too, since I've been a head coach. But, our quarterbacks have come a long way. This is the 5th year in a row we've changed quarterbacks. And the prior 4 were all the player of the year in the league. And they all had their critics. A lot of people that were close to the program didn't think they could play, and they're player of the year in the league. So, if I had a magic formula, I wouldn't share it with you right now and everybody else watching.
That secret sauce that everyone's always looking for
Sauce.
when they're trying to get that
that.
development happening. You do have a quarterback who's transferred in on the roster now, who has been a player of the year in a previous league in Curtis Rourke from Ohio, by way of Canada, of course. Big guy with a lot of talent. How would you evaluate the way his spring has gone?
Like his spring a lot. I think he's come a long way. Understands how to play quarterback. He's had a lot of success. He's won a lot of football games. He's been in pressure situations and responded. So, he's tall. He sees the field. He's got good arm strength. He's got good vision. And he's a super intelligent guy. So I think, he's stacked days. And he's separated himself to some degree at this point. But he'd be the first to tell you there's a lot of areas he can improve on.
And Taven Jackson, amongst a variety of other QBs on the roster who are in the mix right now, how will that competition continue to play out? As far as, do you have a timeline in mind?
I don't have a crystal ball. I guess how it will play out will be determined on how Curtis Rourke and Taven Jackson and Tyler Cherry and whoever else, Mendoza, who's coming in the fall, what they do every single day to help themselves become the best they can be. And then we evaluate it and we play the guy that we think gives us the best chance.
A variety of guys I talked to over the years, they kind of have different approaches to the playbook in the first spring with a squad. Do you just kind of throw everything at them, taking more of a volume approach, or is it kind of a piecemeal sort of situation?
I've been involved in both of those. While I am very involved with the meetings in the spring, I have a tendency to back off. I'm sort of the invisible hand. I'll tell the guys I want to see this or that. We do watch all the good on good together from practice, but I let Mike Shanahan do the install. He's been with me 9 years, and he's kind of a whole part guy. He throws it at him. So I've seen both of them work. I've seen both of them not work. A lot of it depends on how good your players are, but the past 3 or 4 springs, our day one volume has been pretty significant.
It seems that Bryant Haynes has had a lot of success with a fairly aggressive style for you, coaching your defense in years past. Will we see much of that aggression on display Thursday night?
I haven't given a whole lot of thought. Back in the old days, you used to hold some things so people couldn't see it. But, everybody watches your tape from the last 2 years and has a pretty good idea who you are. Bryant Haynes has had a lot of success as a coordinator the last 2 years, and it'd be kind of crazy for him to change everything. So, I think people have an idea what we do. There's some new things everybody puts in the spring that they want to take a look at. Maybe we'll hold a thing or two, but I suspect you'll see about 80% of it Thursday night.
And you're not going, cream versus crimson or first team, second team. You're going defense versus offense, which I love. What made you decide to go with that format?
Everything's ones-on-ones. Everything we do is ones-on-ones, twos-on-twos. It's the only way you get better. You got to go against good competition. To me, this is just another practice, except it's game-like. The coaches are off the field. We'll have a running clock. And, I've never really approached it quite like a game. It's being advertised as a game. We're going to play a half. We probably won't kick the ball except for extra points and field goals. And you guys wanted to come, so I said, okay, let's do it. Let's have a good time. But this is the first time we'll tackle. Our 2 scrimmages have been thud, and it'll be interesting to see how the guys respond to game-like circumstances.
We're definitely going to be watching. There's no doubt about that. And the roster that you have in place right now, you might be aware the transfer portal window is opening back up here. How will you balance the transfer portal opportunities with high school recruiting, especially kind of from this point forward as you formulate the roster?
Well, it's probably why I woke up at 2:30 this morning, was in the office at 4, because today's the first day of the portal. It's like going to Walmart for a big sale. But you got to do good in the portal nowadays. And I think we did very well in January. I think we changed our roster quite a bit. We still have some needs primarily on the defensive side of the ball that we got to fix if we want to accomplish our goals in the fall. And I'm confident that we will. We have a little bit of an unbalanced situation currently on our roster where we have about 47 on offense on scholarship and only 34 on defense. So I've got to get that thing to about 50-50, and we've got to help ourselves a little bit inside up front and at safety, and with depth also. So, but I'm a firm believer, You got to have a solid foundation when you build a house, and you got to sign 15 to 20 high school guys a year. And I think really when your program gets humming, you've got a good nucleus of high school guys, and they believe and they're bought into what you're doing, and you don't lose many guys in the portal. And at JMU, when I was there, we lost 1 or 2 a year max. And but we're not at that point now at Indiana. We still have needs. You got to win right away. People want it now. So as soon as we get off this call, I can guarantee I'll be turning my phone on and seeing who threw their name in today.
Well, Curt Cignetti, I do have a word for you for Thursday. Curious. I know that's definitely how I feel. Waiting to watch you lead your team onto the field Thursday night. Thanks for your time, Coach.
Appreciate it, man. I'll second that. I'm curious, too.
No more reason to be curious about the WNBA draft, because next on Big Ten Today, Megan McEwen joins us to recap the eventful night from last night. We get her thoughts on the Big Ten stars next. Time for our big stat, which goes to Caitlin Clark, who became the first Big Ten player to be selected first overall in the WNBA draft since Janelle McCarville in 2005. Clark was joined by 6 other Big Ten alums, including Ohio State's J.C. Sheldon, who was the 5th overall pick to the Dallas Wings, and her teammate Kate Martin, who was taken in the 2nd round by the Vegas Aces. It was a big night in the Big Ten in the WNBA draft. That was our big stat, and now we have my big friend, Megan McEwen, joining us here during this interview. Megan, you were on the scene last night in Brooklyn. It was the first time they sold tickets to the WNBA draft. It just seemed like the vibe, the juice in the room was electric. What was it like?
Electric's a great way to describe it. The place was absolutely packed. There wasn't a ton of room to move, but it was awesome to see the excitement that people now have for women's basketball. The masses showed up. Everyone was dressed to the nines. The draftees looked absolutely amazing, and it was such a magical night. And you see it with Caitlin Clark getting selected #1 overall and the least surprising #1 overall pick we may have ever seen in a draft.
Now, Caitlin Clark, we've seen her throughout her career. She grew into facing as much scrutiny as maybe any college athlete ever. Now, I'm wondering now that we see what she's the #1 overall pick, how will that end up dovetailing into her WNBA career with the pressure that'll immediately be on her?
If there's one thing we've learned about Caitlin Clark over the course of her career at Iowa is that she steps up to the pressure. And it doesn't seem, at least from the outside, to have an effect on her the way it would most people likely. Caitlin Clark's had every single scenario in the book thrown at her. She went to back-to-back national championships. She broke the all-time scoring record in college basketball. She always rises to the moment. As she goes to the WNBA, it's going to be no different. There is, I think, going to be a little bit of a grace period for Caitlin Clark when she gets up, and she is a rookie. There's going to be some aches and pains that come from learning how to adjust the size and physicality of the WNBA, but it's nothing that she isn't accustomed to, and I imagine she's going to adjust pretty quickly at the next level.
There's so many different aspects of this transition now because we've watched Caitlin Clark so closely during her collegiate career. I'm curious about how the WNBA will go about marketing her now that she is officially in the league. Do you see them marketing her immediately as one of their biggest stars?
They already have started to market her as one of their biggest stars. When you see the marketing from the Indiana Fever and what they did leading up to the draft, you see the marketing all over the league. Diana Taurasi, big picture with little Caitlin Clark, the vet versus the rook, when Phoenix plays the Indiana Fever in a couple of months. Already it's taken over the Las Vegas Aces have had to move to a bigger arena for when the Fever come into town because they're expecting ticket demand to be so high. They absolutely are marketing Caitlin Clark right now, as she should, because she's made a lot of people a lot of money as of late, and she's still one of the most exciting college players we've seen. I'm curious to see how long it's going to take for her to become a very exciting pro. It's going to take a little longer perhaps than people are anticipating, but nonetheless, she's going to get there. She's proven it time and time again that she can step up to the moment.
Well, we can't wait to watch that specifically with Caitlin Clark. As I referenced a moment ago, J.C. Sheldon, the #5 pick to the Dallas Wings. What's your evaluation of the situation that the Ohio State Buckeye, former point guard for them, gets drafted into?
JC Sheldon's in a great position to make that roster. And that's the biggest thing people have to realize. Even though these players have gotten drafted, it does not automatically mean they have a roster spot. They have to go to camp. They have to compete to try to make a spot on the 12-woman roster. JC Sheldon, defense at a high level. She can knock down the three, and she's got a high motor. Those are three perfect things to have in your tool bag if you're going to be a WNBA star. The Dallas Wings were last in the WNBA last season in three-point shooting at 31%. She can knock down the three, but her IQ and motor defensively is what makes her so special. Similar to when freshmen come into college, you have to learn how to defend at a high level to get valuable minutes on the court normally. Same thing in the WNBA. You have to be able to defend at a high level. JC Sheldon does that, just that. And she's going to be with some other Big Ten alums that are on that roster, such as Veronica Burton.
And the tempo that Kevin McGuff has the Buckeyes play at, really on each end of the court, can be kind of frenetic at times. Will that aid the transition for JC Sheldon?
100%. The pace that Ohio State plays with, their ability to press and quickly go from offense to defense, certainly translates well over to the next level.
Well, in the second round, the Indiana Fever, after getting the player, especially the ultimate weapon on offense, in Caitlin Clark with the top pick, they end up getting Celeste Taylor in round number 2. She's such a great wing defender, probably the best wing on-ball defender in this draft cycle. How do you see her skills transitioning?
You said it right there. When you garner back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year honors in 2 different Power 5 conferences, you're in a really good position to make a roster because you can defend. Celeste Taylor understands how to cut down angles, how to stay in front of the person with the ball, and she's so athletic and reads the eyes of the passer. I love her ability to commit defensively, but also really make it her identity as a player. Celeste Taylor is not going to be relied heavily on to score in the WNBA starting out, but for her to already have that defensive piece clicking for her is going to be massive as these rookies start to head into camps.
Now, I was hopeful that Kate Martin would get drafted for what she's meant to my alma mater over the years. I was pleasantly surprised. She was a top 20 pick to the 2-time defending champs. Did that catch you off guard a little bit?
I was so excited for Kate Martin, who was in attendance, and she was just there to support Caitlin Clark. She wasn't sure if and when she would go in the draft, but nonetheless, to hear Kate Martin's name called, so deserving of the moment. I've loved watching her game grow over the course of her career at Iowa. Kate Martin does all of the little things that coaches love. She sets good screens. She dives on the floor for loose balls. She puts her teammates in positions to be successful, and she sticks up for them as well. She is the ultimate teammate. There is a reason why they call her the glue. It translates well at the next level. I love how she's already been tweeting back and forth with Asia Wilson on the Aces. Asia said, "Hey, I've got a shirt for you when you come in," because she went to South Carolina. Kate quote tweeted and said, "I've got a shirt for you too." You know, referencing, of course, last year's Final Four. And then you have Megan Gustafson as well on the Las Vegas Aces that Kate Martin's going to be reunited with. They did play a year together at Iowa.
No doubt. I'm sure they're looking forward to seeing each other and playing together again. Quickly to the third round, where Mackenzie Holmes, Jazz Shelley, and Ashley Owusu all ended up getting picked up there. Is there a player amongst those three? Holmes won't be on the field immediately because of recovering from knee surgery, but out of those players in Holmes, Shelley, and Owusu that you think maybe goes into a situation where they have the best opportunity to make a roster?
Jazz Shelley is intriguing because she's played with pros, being from Australia growing up. So she understands the pace and the physicality that comes with playing in the pros. I also like her situation in terms of her ability to play in ball screen actions. She's elite at it, and you see a ton of ball screen offenses in the WNBA. She, I feel like, is coming into a pretty good situation. And of course, she's going to get to learn from Diana Taurasi, who is one of the best if you get to pick who you're going to learn from when it terms of being a pro. But, you know, Mackenzie Holmes recovering, she has elite footwork as a post player. That could be a potential great situation for her. And Ashley Owusu is a playmaker. They've all got talent. You got to have a little bit of game if you're going to get drafted. In terms of who has the best situation to make a roster spot, I like Jazz Shelley's odds right now.
Definitely like the sounds of that. I just came back from her home country. I saw a couple of Jazz Shelley jerseys that were over there as well. Folks are all about it down under. And we're all about you, Megan McCune. You get a brief respite before you get into WNBA coverage and everything else. Thanks a lot.
Good talking to you, my friend.
That is Megan McEwen. Let's get back to some football conversation here. The spring football variety, we get in the butt back in the house to talk about quarterbacks, new coaches, you name it. It's next on Big Ten Today. The NCAA has determined their sanctions for Michigan football. They determined the Wolverines committed violations during the COVID recruiting process. One of the statements from the NCAA reads as such: Michigan and 5 individuals who currently or previously worked for its football program have reached an agreement with NCAA enforcement staff on recruiting violations and coaching activities by non-coaching staff members that occurred within the football program and the appropriate penalties for those violations. A committee on infractions panel has approved the agreement. One former coach did not participate in the agreement, and that portion of the case will be considered separately by the Committee on Infractions, after which the committee will release its full decision. The agreed upon penalties in this case include 3 years of probation for the school, a fine, and recruiting restrictions in alignment with the Level 1 mitigated classification for the school. The participating individuals also agreed to 1 year show cause. That from the NCAA. Speaking of Michigan, we do have a full slate of spring football games on the Big Ten Network this weekend. Starting with the Hoosiers on Thursday at 8 Eastern, which can be seen on Big Ten Network. Illinois and Michigan State, it can also be seen right here at 2 and 4 Eastern on Saturday. We'll have full coverage of future Big Ten members USC's spring game, and Michigan will play at 2 Eastern Saturday over on Fox. Well, let's get to the conversation on the field, Jake Butt. Let's start with the Michigan Wolverines. Sharon Moore gets the first opportunity that he's had with the big whistle to be the head coach, to lead the Wolverines onto the field in spring football action. What do you see as a big question that Michigan has to answer as they take the field here?
Everybody's going to talk about the quarterback, and rightfully so. J.J. McCarthy is going to be the first offensive skill position from Michigan to go in the first round since Braylon Edwards. Think about that, right? I think about all the guys that have came through, how talented J.J. was, and they're replacing him. So is it Alex Orji? I look at the headlines, and they always say he's athletic, he can run the ball. I want the headlines to say smart, throws the ball, gets it out there. And some guys have given credit. Want to see that on Saturday. Is it Denegal, more of a pocket passer? I know Davis Warren has done some nice things. He's a phenomenal story. Jack Tuttle is not playing. He's a guy that's working back. So it just gives us a chance to see who the quarterback is. But besides that, there's questions at the wide receiver room where Tyler Morris seems like wide receiver 1. We saw Samaj Morgan last year. What about behind him? Where's the depth? So that's going to factor in is how those quarterbacks look with new wide receivers as well. I know that what the defense is going to be. So when they split the teams apart, it's hard for Michigan's one offense to go against that one defense right now with all the new pieces and how talented they are. But what does it look like in more of a competitive, structured spring game where you break up some of that talent? We're all going to be talking about the quarterback. We will see how the skill positions look as well.
There was such an incredible core in place that led Michigan to the 3 Big Ten titles and the national championship. Now a lot of that core is gone, and the head coach, of course, gone to the NFL. So there's a lot of curiosity about what the Wolverines look like. Certainly some curiosity in Champaign-Urbana as well. Brett Bielema and the Illini, they'll be on the spring football field this Saturday. Got both coordinators back, and Barry Leddy Jr., Aaron Henry running the defense for the second season there. What do you think stands out about the Illini?
Got your quarterback back to go with your coordinators. That's great, but they're replacing a ton at the skill position. So Reggie Love transferred to Purdue. Isaiah Williams is going to the NFL. Casey Washington's going to the NFL. And then you lose 2 key pieces on the offensive line in Julian Pearl and Isaiah Adams, both NFL prospects. And you sit here and you say that, Brett Bielema wins games by playing good defense and being able to run the football. So it's going to be we'll be keeping our eyes on who are those surrounding pieces and how do they look outside of the quarterback.
And with that in mind for the Illini, because the quarterback position is not the question, we do know that the offensive and defensive front for the Illini is a very big deal every time Brett Bielema coaches a team. The line of scrimmage, can you prove a lot in spring football with that?
It depends on the structure. If it's ones versus ones, then we can start to say, okay, one guy's dominant and one's not. But again, with spring ball, if one unit is too dominant, then you might have concerns for the other unit. But you're exactly right. You know, certain teams have identity. I believe that matters. And Brett Bielema, his specialty has been having quality trench play. He's developed, you know, going all the way back throughout his coach career. He's recruited and developed quality offensive and defensive linemen. He's going to have to do it again this year.
Well, questions in East Lansing because you've got a first-year head coach there in Jonathan Smith, who's had so much success as a head coach at Oregon State, as a coordinator going back before that as well after his playing career at Oregon State. So in East Lansing, when the roster has some turnover to it there, so what do you think the Michigan State Spartans will look like on Saturday?
What I hope to see is identity and fire. You know, when I always knew when we played Michigan State back in the day, I better get ready to play. No yawning that morning. You get ready, because they, under D'Antonio, they were physical, they were mean, they were fierce and had fight up front. They had a clear identity. When Mel Tucker had success with Kenneth Walker, it was a clear identity. Yeah. These past few years, I can't say what their identity was. So what you would hope with a new coaching staff, a new quarterback, is we'll get a chance to see on display what the identity of Michigan State will be.
Same question then for the Hoosiers, where Curt Cignetti, we're wondering about that identity, maybe a little bit of transition in how they operate in Bloomington.
I'm excited to see him. I mean, you know, he's got that fire, that competitiveness. I'd expect that to transfer over to the roster, and I loved your interview with him because he said, we're going to put one offense versus one defense, and hey, everyone's got our film anyways, so we're going to show 85% of what we do anyways. We're going to see a real football game, and he's just a polarizing guy, man. He brings such great energy. I'm excited to see the Hoosiers take the field.
I think a lot of Big Ten fans excited about the opportunity to watch USC. Lincoln Riley, one of the new members in the Big Ten here, also having coordinators. We know Lincoln calls the offense, but Josh Henson on offense, Danton Lynn on defense. New acquisition they made on that side of the ball, but a lot of turnover for the Trojans roster.
I said, can they do it again? Can Lincoln Riley take Miller Moss and make him a Heisman candidate one again? Everywhere he's been, the quarterback.
Right.
So I believe that'll be true. The defense was the issue, and Danton Lynn comes over from UCLA, where the defense he inherited at UCLA, they were 87th in the nation. They were 11th when he left. Significant improvement. Even more so, we talk about the former Pac-12 teams joining the Big Ten. Hey, are they physical? They were the #1 rushing defense in college football last year. So he knows how to coach football. I'm excited to see the defense. If you turned on the tape last year, was not even average at times. Seriously. If they can get a quality defense to match what will be a Lincoln Riley-led offense, this team is extremely dangerous.
It's one of those situations where new personnel, probably not all bad for the Trojans, because you do want to make sure you're enhancing what they do on both sides of the football. There was that quarterback that Jake kind of made reference to, who's going to be the top pick in this coming draft. We will talk some NFL draft. Jake will stay right here with me as we prepare to do that next on Big Ten Today. Let's wrap the big show looking at Rob Rang's top 100 prospects in this year's NFL draft, and 13 of them coming from the Big Ten. You see Marvin Harrison Jr. Some people feel like not just the top receiver, maybe the top prospect in the entire draft. Cooper DeJean, J.J. McCarthy, who we talked about a moment ago, going all the way down to folks like Cade Stover and Mikey Sainristil still. Maybe he'll be one of the players who we discuss in just one moment here with Jake. But in sort of a prelude to the NFL draft, let's begin on the defensive front, though. One of your favorite draft prospects is Michael Hall Jr.
Yeah, and really, I think he may end up being the best interior pass rusher of this draft. He dominated the Senior Bowl. He's extremely laterally quick. He doesn't move like a 3-tech, which is what he'll play at the next level. This guy absolutely dominated the Senior Bowl. His pro day, he ran a 4.78. That's faster than me. He's fast. And then his pass rush win rate, which is a great metric to say, hey, when you have a chance to rush the passer, how often are you winning? Second highest in college football. So when this guy had a chance to be disruptive, he was doing it. He's a prospect that, you know, may have to develop and grow into an every down defensive lineman. But as the NFL moves towards more of a pass-happy league, when you can get a guy that can play in size, he has the size to hold it down. It may not be his absolute strength, but certainly when he has the chance to rush the passer, watch out.
I mean, pass rush specialists used to just be edge guys. Now you do have them on the interior of the defensive front as well. No doubt, the favorite Mike Hall that any of us have here related to Big Ten athletics. Let's talk about a different Mike, though. Mikey Sainristil is still one of the more versatile prospects in this draft cycle, Jake.
Versatile is a great word, and I want to use the example of the Detroit Lions and how they've went from a losing team to a winning team, and a big piece of that was culture, drafting a certain type of guy. Mikey Sainristil is that type of guy. Sacrifices for the team. I remember when he went from receiver to nickel and immediately comes on the scene and explodes. Just a ball hawk. Wherever you needed him, he was making plays in the nickel, in coverage, intercepting the football. Also was a great blitzer off the edge. A guy that's just continuing. He's just now getting back into that rhythm on the defensive side of the football. But I don't care about his size. I don't want to hear it, because what he does really well, angles can make up for that. IQ, the wide receiver background, understanding how to undercut routes, vision, feel. He checks every one of that box, and that means more to me than having a guy with the perfect size.
And when you're talking playmakers, I mean, there's some guys who just have a knack for that, and especially in critical moments. Mikey Sainristil made some of the biggest plays of the season.
Yes, yeah, and I love that. I love that. You know, and turn on the biggest games in the biggest moments. That play he made against Cade Stover in the not this past year, the year before, the 22 Ohio State game, one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Incredible. Let's finish quickly with Max Melton, a guy whose mentality seems like it'll transition well.
Absolutely, and another guy that has made himself some money in these past few months. Ran a 4.39 40. That's flying. That's what you'd love to see out of your corner. But, you know, Jim Harbaugh would tell us the best compliment you can ever give is to be a football player. That's Max Melton. You want to talk about a ball hawk, 8 interceptions in his career. 4 fumble recoveries, 1 forced fumble. But what I love more than anything is the special teams. He blocked 4 punts in his career. If you can do that for a team, you'll have a 15-year career. Think about Matthew Slater as the gunner for the Patriots. If you can make an impact felt and get the ball back to your offense, you'll always have a spot.
Show yourself as a playmaker early, a guy who's willing to make those core 4 happen on special teams. Maybe you develop into a defensive standout as well. Always a standout in my heart, Jake Butt. I'm Anthony Herron. Thanks for tuning in to Big Ten Today.